So I decided to make a little home gym. I guess maybe we should start at the beginning. For a kid who, you know, my whole life just had body image issues because I started out, well, fat pretty much my whole life. If you would ask me what I wanted as a kid, it probably would have been just to be skinny. So I went through a phase for probably a couple of years where I essentially just pretty much starved myself and worked my way up to running long distances on a daily basis just to try to lose as much weight as I could. And I did. I lost like 70 or 80 pounds, and for once I'd actually achieved my goal of being skinny, and realized it wasn't really what I thought it would be. And I realized at that time what I actually wanted was to be muscular, and to have a good body, not just to be skinny. So the weights were my way of accomplishing that. So with no direction at all, I entered my uncle's basement and used it consistently, I think for about a year, until Christmas one year. My dad was nice enough to buy me my own weight set. And it was probably the most exciting gift I've ever received. And hindsight, you know, looking back, it was probably the most significant gift that I ever received. Every day I worked out in that basement, and I couldn't wait. You know, I'd come home from school, get whatever homework done that I had to get done. Ideally, a lot of times I would get it done during school if I had a study hall or something, get it done, so that way when I came home I could just go straight to working out. I remember when I got the weight set, there was a book with it. It was like weightlifting workbook or training workbook or something like that. And it showed you how to do all the exercises, you know, with a barbell and with dumbbells. And I studied that book, and even during like my workouts, I would refer to it, and I must have looked at that book 1,000 times and made notes in it and whatnot. From probably my sophomore year till, you know, through my senior year, I worked out in my basement, and I built a pretty decent, you know, starting physique with it. There was something about it which I didn't realize until I actually joined a commercial gym. And when I joined the gym, it was great. You know, all of a sudden you're surrounded, you got all this equipment. You know, in my basement, I've got barbell, dumbbells, a couple, you know, racks that I made for the dumbbells, some scrap metal that I found at the dump, a pull-up bar that I bolted to the wall, same thing, that I made out of scrap. Working out with limited equipment forces you to be creative and to learn just what you could do with a barbell and some dumbbells. So when I started working out in a gym, it became apparent to me that most people didn't really know how to work out. And probably a lot of it was because they had access to so many different machines that they never had to actually learn proper use of dumbbells and or a barbell. And over the years, no matter what gym I've joined, I've noticed the same thing. A lot of people don't know how to train. And I've noticed something in myself. You know, once I initially got over that excitement of having all this equipment, all these, you know, fancy machines, I found myself just going back to the barbell and the dumbbells anyways. Because there's not much you're gonna do that you can't do in a more effective way with those tools. Which isn't to say that I don't use machines or things like that, but which I certainly do. But I think the core of my training revolves around just the barbell and dumbbells. So over the years, I tried to never get too far away from that. So here I find myself, how many years later, 37 years old, in my own basement, saying to myself, geez, you know what? I kind of want that setup again. It would be nice to go back to basics. Not to say I'm never gonna stop going to the gym, at least that's not in my plans at the moment, but I wouldn't mind a little solitude. I wouldn't mind getting reacquainted with myself, so to speak. Now, I don't know if I've entirely lost touch with myself or anything like that, but there's something to be said. I think anyone who works out in a home gym will tell you there's something to be said for putting on your own radio, turning on a fan, and you know, if you want to work out and take your shirt off, or you know, look at yourself, or you know, do a movement that you don't know if it makes sense yet or not, try something different, and not really care if you look like a total weirdo because there's nobody there to see you do it. It's really one of the greatest things ever, and I think it's one of the things that leads you to discovery and allows you to be a really good bodybuilder and a good weightlifter, or a good anything in life, right? When you're not afraid to do something for fear of looking ridiculous, usually you'll stumble upon something good. So here I am. It's a project I started a few months back, and it started with the idea of just putting a rack, a place to do you know, bench, squat, and deadlift. Said, you know what, I'm gonna get a rack together, a bar, some plates, and a bench. That way I could bench, squat, and dead. And you know what? Geez, come to think of it, I could barbell curl, I could do skull crushers, I could do military press, right? You start thinking of all the things you're gonna do just with a barbell. And there's a lot that you can do. I can deadlift, I can do upright rows, all sorts of stuff. And they said, well, you know what? Geez, if I had some dumbbells, then I could really go to town. So I spent a lot of time on Craigslist, you know, scanning Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. I picked up a set of dumbbells. And then I said, well, you know, for some leg training, it wouldn't hurt to have a couple extra pieces. Yeah, of course I can squat and, you know, do split squats and things like that. But man, it'd be great to be able to do some extensions and even some kind of press, you know, whether it was a leg press or a hack squat, that'd be pretty money. So, you know, next thing came a leg extension and a hack squat. It's funny how sometimes just an idea, you know, you start off with this idea of something, and it's something small, and you put it in motion and it grows. It's a good thing that I have limited space down here, because probably the whole basement would turn into a full-fledged gym. Preparing my basement for this gym started with me reorganizing my basement. I spent like a week taking dump runs and moving stuff around and trying to gain a vision of how I was going to lay everything out. And then I decided to panel the walls with this you know, faux wood paneling that probably everybody hates, but for me represents, well, oddly, this is funny. This didn't even occur to me until I'm actually saying it out loud. My uncle's basement was decked out with wood paneling. Maybe, geez, I totally didn't even realize that. But to panel the walls, because for me, part of it was a subconscious thing, but you know, a lot of gyms from the 70s and whatnot had that look, and for me, it represents something classic and kind of warm and homey feeling. Just this morning, put up the mirrors. Got the guys coming to install carpet in a couple hours. After that, I'm gonna move out all the equipment onto the floor where it's gonna be. I'm still in search of a hamstring curl. That's one piece I'd like to have. To be honest, it makes me wish I was opening like a commercial gym. I'd love to do it on a massive scale. Picked up a welder or two and some steel to actually put together the squat rack myself, which I'll be welding together in the near future. What's going on, guys? Evan Centopani here. We're in Bridgeport, Connecticut today. And back of me is my father's machine shop. We're working on building a power rack. And I got here a couple hours ago to kind of get a jump start on a couple things, because it's a time-consuming process, but come on in. I want to show you what I'm working on. What we're working with here is 3x3 3/16 thickness steel. A lot of what you see in a typical gym is in terms of the gauge of the steel, that's the thickness, right? It's usually like 11 gauge or something like that. 3/16 I think is around like 7 gauge. So it's pretty heavy steel, it's pretty thick stuff. Having the option, when you're building your own stuff, and you're gonna go and actually source the steel, you can get whatever thickness you want. So I said, you know what, given the option, I think I want something a little heavier. I'm only gonna, I'm gonna take the time to build this, so whether I drill something that's 11 gauge or something that's 7 gauge, it's not gonna really make a difference in terms of the time that I'm spending. So might as well do something heavy duty. And so this is where we're at. Come over here. First of all, being in Bridgeport, Connecticut, let me give you a little history. This is a Bridgeport. It's technically what's considered a milling machine. And what it does is basically it's like a giant, almost like a giant drill press. As I'm gonna show you, you put a drill bit in here or an end mill and cut holes. Or, there's other ways of, cutting. You can do all sorts of things with this machine. All I'm using it for basically is it's just a glorified drill press to me today. So what I've had to do is I've marked off the steel every 2 inches because this is gonna hold the J cups, right? The thing that we're gonna put the bar into. So I marked it off every 2 inches to give myself a good bit of adjustment. So what I have to do is go along and do a pilot hole, or a smaller drill hole. So then I could go through it with this. It's like this is just over 1 inch, this drill bit. So it's pretty big. So it takes a little bit of time. It's quite time consuming to go along, drill each hole with a pilot hole, then go back and go over it with this one. So I guess without further ado, let me show you some. Go through one side of it, and now we got to go down and go through the second wall. As you can see, it's not super fast. I mean, this is my first time doing this, and to be honest, I don't really know what I'm doing. So it's very possible that, the bits that I'm using, I don't know how sharp they are. I don't know necessarily if I'm running at the optimal RPM, etc. So someone who's more experienced than me might be able to just buzz right through this. As you can see right here, this is what's called a digital readout. So when I begin the process at a certain hole, I start everything at 0. Right? So as I move along, you can see right now, say I'm plus 4 inches, right? Or plus 4. If I know that each hole is 2 inches apart, then all I've got to do is bring this over and go from 4 to 6, and that'll mean I've gone exactly 2 inches. That way I know I'm in the exact spot that I want to be every time. I think it's important to mention that through the process of making something, right, of creating something, for me, it's always been something that feels innate, something that feels normal. And I think it's part of why I was always drawn to bodybuilding, right? It's about building something. It's about creation. It's about improvement. And in some ways, making something where it didn't previously exist. And stuff like this is really no different. It's creation. It's kind of having a vision of something and bringing it to fruition, making it happen, and then being able to stand back and say, yeah, that's what I had in mind. As a bodybuilder, that's what I do with my physique. And whether it's growing a garden or having children, I mean, I think as humans, I think creation and the building of things, I think that's kind of our most innate function. And it's something that I think a lot of us lose touch with. I think that's kind of how I keep my sanity, and in some ways it's maybe my attempt to find purpose. So then, even though I moved the table out to change the bit, all I do now is just on the y-axis, just bring it back to 0, and I'll be right in the exact same line that I was before. As you can see, this one moves a bit faster. All right, so now that we've got all these holes drilled, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring these pieces outside and put the grinding wheel to them, bring them down to bare metal, not only because that's preferable when it comes time to weld them, because we want, you know, nice clean metal for a good weld, but also because that's just kind of the aesthetic that I want. Just kind of that bare metal look, and then I'll clear coat it later just to prevent it from rusting. But also too, with the grinder, kind of some of these holes have got some, you know, burrs on them and whatnot. So just kind of smooth it out and just, you know, make for a nicer finished product. So once we get all this stuff ground down, we got some welding to do. So let's get to it. My goal now, I think, is very similar to what it was 20 years ago, and it's to largely to know myself and to gain control of myself and to do things that are in accordance with what I believe. And it's, you know, as we go through life, I think in the name of being responsible and fulfilling roles that you think society expects of you, sometimes it's easy to lose touch with that. And maybe returning here to my basement is kind of maybe a reflection of my desire to get back to basics and get back in touch with myself. Here we are. She is finished, and this thing is a freaking tank. I'm so happy with the way that it turned out, and I'm generally pretty critical of myself and the work I do. And, you know, usually I can walk away from something and go, you know, it came out okay, but, you know, there's just one little part, and, you know, it'll kind of irk me or whatever. But this, I'm very happy. It came out so solid, and you know, like everything was just square and just dead on, level, etc. I mean, I was expecting, you know, once we got it set in my basement, that the legs, the feet would have to be leveled, you know, maybe shimmed up here or there, that it would rock a little bit. I mean, the thing was just set dead flat, and that in itself is rare, especially since I only half know kind of what I'm doing. You know, it's funny, when my buddy Tony was leaving tonight, well, he was down here in the basement helping me clean up, and he's like, dude, he's like, this is awesome that you did this. He's like, I want one. But he goes, you know, what's even cooler than that you did it was that, you know, your dad did it with you. Maybe I take that for I don't know why it gets me. No, my dad's always had my back from day one. And I guess maybe a lot of people don't have that. And yeah, I am really lucky to have that. Yeah, I mean, look, you know, he went through six years of fighting cancer. He went through a lot. Still having him here, and you know, getting to see him in action is good stuff. You know, over the years, there've been these little bits and pieces where, you know, you get to say, hey, remember the time we did this? Or, you know, remember we did that? And, you know, we can both kind of sit there and go, we did a good job. You know, this will just be one more of those things. I guess we all do leave behind some kind of legacy, whether it's good or bad. And I do hope to leave behind something good. Probably one of the greatest gifts my father ever gave me was this sense of having an ability to do something, right? You have an idea in your head and you figure out a way to make it happen. The only thing I found in life, as I've gone on, it's not so much getting what you want or making happen what it is you want. It's just actually deciding you want to do it. Because there've been plenty of things along the way where I actually decided, yes, I want this, I want to do it. And I don't think I've ever not done it. It's a cool feeling to know if I want to do something, yeah, I'll find a way to do it. And look, for me, like, I've got 2 kids, right? And for my daughter, right, to show her, say, yeah, well, I made that. And for her to know that it's possible, that you want something, you have an idea in your head, yeah, you can go and make it. You just do it, you can make it. And I'm sure I'll get opportunities with her to do just that. She will have an idea in her head of something that she wants, something she wants to do. I'll be able to seize that opportunity and say, all right, well, let's do it. And her say, well, how? So I don't know, let's figure it out and we'll do it. And hopefully we can sit back and, you know, kind of just sit back and say, wow, we did a good job. Yeah, so having made this, yeah, I feel fulfilled. It'll probably last a couple of days and then I'll need to do something new. I guess everybody has their own way in which they create their sense of self-worth. Just, you know, there's all different ways to do it. For me, and I think I get it maybe to a degree from my father, is you have to make something. I have to learn something, I have to build something, I have to be able to look at it once it's done and say, wow, I didn't know what I was doing, but I figured it out. And it's part of that, right, is growth. So I guess it all really makes sense as a bodybuilder to find sanity and find an activity, an act like this rewarding.